the premium coach scene in the UK in the 1960s. A very competitive market. Many different makes, models, and body styles. One unique and interesting coach was the Duple Viceroy. Designed to take away market share from rival Plaxton's offerings, it didn't quite make the mark. This is the story of the Duple Viceroy, the coach that failed to rule its market. Hi, this is Jeffrey. Now, back in the UK in the 1960s, there was a lot of competition in the higher-end premium coach market. There were lots of different makes and models, lots of different styles, and even styles within styles. And two of the major bodybuilders for coaches back then was Plaxton and Duple. Plaxton had their very well-known Panorama line of coaches, and Duple had the Bella range. But the Bella range really needed to be updated to compete with the Panorama. And so Duple created the Viceroy, which I think was a really fabulous looking, very interesting type of a coach. Now, the Viceroy wasn't as successful as they thought it was going to be, and so they eventually had it redesigned and updated to have it compete more with Plaxton's offerings. So that's what we're going to look at today. The Duple Viceroy, which I think is a really interesting looking coach. So let's get started in looking at the Duple Viceroy from Duple Coach Builders. In the mid to late 1960s and even into the 1970s, competition was fierce in the UK for the higher-end coach market. Design was a significant factor in making sales, and some fabulous coaches would be produced during this time. One unique design was the Duple Viceroy. The Duple Viceroy was a modern panoramic style of coach bodywork built by Duple between 1966 and 1972. It was initially launched on a lightweight front-end chassis, but it was later built on a mid-engined and heavyweight chassis as well. A variant of the Viceroy was the Duple Viceroy Express, which had a bus-type entrance door, making it suitable for stage carriage work. In 1966, Duple's standard Bella family of coach bodies for full-sized front-engine chassis was sold under a variety of model names specific to the chassis. Bella Ventura for the Bedford Vam, Empress for the Ford R192, the Mariner for the Ford R226, and the Vega Major for the Bedford Val, all of which were built at Duple's original Hendon factory in North London. Duple's coach designs were usually updated every 2 or 3 years, and for the 1967 season, the range was due a major redesign. Duple had been losing sales to its main rival Plaxton, whose large windowed panorama model was making Duple's Bella range look dated. By this time, Plaxton had been using an outside industrial design firm, while Duple still was not, possibly putting Duple at a disadvantage. The new Viceroy model, announced in August of 1966, sought to address this market loss and to outdo Plaxton by not only making the windows longer, but also providing large quarter-light windows above the cantrail level. The effect was to make the upper half of the coach beyond the angled window pillar appear to be entirely glazed when viewed from the side. The original Viceroy was deliberately angular in its styling, with its chrome trim laid out to accentuate the raked window pillar and the stepped window line at the cantrail. The Viceroy would be built on the following chassis. Number 1, AEC Reliance. Number 2, the tri-axle twin-steer Bedford Val. Number 3, Bedford Vam. Number 4, Bedford YRQ. Number 5, Bedford YRT. Number 6, Ford R192. Number 7, Ford R226. Number 8, Leyland Leopard. And number 9, Sedan Pennine 6. The Viceroy was produced in the following lengths. Number 1, 32 feet or approximately 10 meters. Number 2, 36 feet or approximately 11 meters. And number 3, 39 feet 4 inches or 12 meters for the Val and R226 for 1969. Production of the new Viceroy range began at Hendon in late 1966 for the 1967 sales season on Bedford Val or VAM and Ford R192 or R226 chassis. Bodies on the 32-foot VAM and R192 could seat up to 45 passengers, whereas the longer 36-foot Viceroy 36 on the Val and R226 seated up to 52. Eventually, manufacture of all Viceroys would be transferred to Blackpool. A facelift for the Viceroy range was announced at the 1968 Commercial Motor Show for the 1969 season to compete better with Plaxton. At this time, Duple hired Olson Design Limited to update the Viceroy. Its founder, Carl Olson, was an American who previously worked as a designer at General Motors, was a tutor at London's Royal College of Art, and later became head of Citroën's design studio. To achieve a more favorable look of the coach body, the angular styling of the original Viceroy was toned down, and the facelift sought instead to emphasize the horizontal lines of the body with a new chromework layout, a wider front grille, and revised headlamp and front bumper designs. By this time, the maximum length for UK buses and coaches had been increased to 12 meters or 39 feet 4 inches, and the facelift also included a slight increase in length for the Val and R226 bodies, henceforth known as the Viceroy 37 and seating up to 53. Despite the facelifts for the Viceroy, as well as the Commander, its main rival Plaxton had again gained an advantage on Duple with the launch of their own new model at the same show. With its even larger curved glass windows, the Plaxton Panorama Elite made the Viceroy, and especially the Commander, look dated, and Duple fell behind Plaxton in sales for the first time during the 1969 season. Faced with the need to design a completely new model to challenge the Panorama Elite, while at the same time transferring production from Hendon to Blackpool, Duple had no immediate answer to this problem, and the Viceroy range did not receive any major styling changes for the remainder of its production life. In its final years, the Viceroy became available on a wider range of chassis. The Commander body had been dropped in 1970, so for the 1971 and 1972 seasons, the Viceroy and Viceroy 37 were made available on heavyweight mid-engined AEC Reliance and Leyland Leopard chassis, although production of these totaled only 66 because the increasingly dated Viceroy was no match for the Panorama Elite at the premium end of the coach market. For the final 1972 season, the Viceroy was also built on the front-engined set-on Pennine 6 in 10, 11, and 12-meter lengths, the latter being the first 12-meter coaches built by Duple and seating 57. During 1972, the 3-axle Bedford Val model was replaced by the more conventional mid-engined Bedford YRT. The British government's bus grant provided a 50% subsidy towards the cost of new service buses, but did not apply to coaches. However, many operators used their coaches on local bus services as well as coaching, particularly in the winter months when coach business was quieter. For the 1972 season, the Viceroy Express body was built on YRQ and R192 chassis, this having bus-type doors and other modifications to make them suitable for one-man operation stage carriage services. Despite being increasingly outmoded, the Viceroy, along with the smaller Vista and Vega, continued to sell well on lightweight chassis until the end of production. At the end of 1972, the all-new Duple Dominant was launched to replace the Viceroy. The Dominant was heavily influenced by the styling of the Plaxton Panorama Elite, with the same large curved windows and the added advantage of being an all-metal construction. Viceroy bodies remained a common sight on Britain's roads well into the 1980s, but their timber-framed construction and the fact that they were almost all built on less durable lightweight chassis meant that by the end of the decade, very few were still in use as coaches. Unfortunately, a Duple Viceroy was involved in the Dibbles Bridge coach crash in 1975. one of the UK's worst ever road accidents. After the brakes on a 1967 Bedford VAM 5 failed, it ran out of control down a steep gradient and rolled over on the curve at the bottom, falling over the side of a bridge and landing on and crushing its roof. The coach had carried a full load of 45 passengers, plus the driver, of whom only 13 passengers survived. The accident led to tougher structural standards for coach bodywork, although by that time, Duple and other manufacturers had already switched from wooden frames to stronger all-metal bodies. A number of Viceroys do still exist in preservation, giving enthusiasts and the general public the chance to see and experience these unique coaches up front. Now, whenever I see the Duple Viceroy, especially the updated version, and especially when it's on a Bedford Val, to me it looks like a bus or a coach that would show up in a Jerry Anderson TV show, because it looks very modern, very futuristic, especially for its time. But unfortunately, it just couldn't compete with the Plaxton Panorama. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at the Duple Viceroy. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye.